Spring's a perfect time to do observational drawings and take a look at what's around us, what's growing. If you're doing something like a plant or a tree study, it's really great to go out into nature. You can take your own photographs and bring them back inside if it's raining. But if it's a gorgeous day out, grab a clipboard or a book, some paper and a pencil, and head outside. So I'm going to head over to this coniferous tree behind me. I'm not sure what kind it is. And I'm going to share some tips with how to find the form and then draw in some details. So when you're drawing, you have to start by asking yourself what the general shape is. To me, this is your typical Christmas tree shape. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch that out on my paper. Let's see, so I'm going to start by, think of like a stick figure. The tree is very tall, wide at the bottom, comes back up and bows out a little bit. Make sure that you're always looking from your tree or your object to your paper so that you can always make corrections as need be. Okay. I also noticed that the base of the tree sort of slants. So I'm going to go ahead and start making a slant right here. Okay, and there's a little bit of a trunk. It has, looks like 1, 2, and 3 giant roots that come out of it. And the next thing that I noticed that we have some branches, and the branches come out from either side parallel. So that means like if there's one here, then it looks like there's just about one right across from it. I'm going to go all the way up, doing this sort of thing. And of course, there are some branches that point up and some branches that point down. And then there are some that are right out in front. And those, I'm going to just draw in the clumps of branches. Sort of look like this. And then as it gets to the top, the branches go up. All the way up and out. Okay. Yeah, that's actually about what it looks like. Okay. And down below here, the branches seem to point down. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to draw some of these branches that bow down. Doesn't look like much right now, but as long as you have your eraser handy, you can go back in and take out some of these details. So for an idea of what you can do is you can start to draw where you see those branches. And I like to do quick scribbly sketches just to get out the idea of what the shape is. Because remember, if you were to draw every single pine needle, it would take a really long time. And many of the branches come down. So look, they look like big scribbly monster hands, right? It's okay. When you're doing these observational details, this is just a far away sketch. It's the ones that go up close that actually make a big difference. Once you have more of those clumps of branches down, you can go back in and start redefining some of those details. So like there's maybe a branch here, and there's a branch right here. Okay, and there's a trunk that goes through the center of the tree. You might see some branches that come up through here. All right. Don't forget you have your eraser for a reason, so you can go back in. I'm using my cow eraser. It works. I'm going to start erasing all those areas that I use just to find the shape. So just going to take a second to do it. And you can see that I actually ended up erasing a lot of my picture. That's fine because now I still have light areas that I can go back in. Okay, so you have branches. Some of them are going up, some of them are going down. Overall, you have what is a good start of your tree. So now I'm going to go up close and we'll take a look at one of those branches. Notice that you have to count how many tiny branches come off of the main branch. This is a really big deal because it also helps you identify the kind of tree, as well as the pine needles. Are they long or are they short? And the more questions that you ask, the better your drawing will be, because that you can't draw what you don't understand. So to understand something, you have to ask lots of questions. All right, let's see how I do with this. So what I've done is I've taken a part of the branch and I want to magnify it, so I circled it and made an arrow to show you that this is what it actually looks like up close. And I'm going to continue working on some of these details and find some more distinguishing features of this tree, such as what kind of pine cones does it have? And I'll probably end up drawing one of those. And then I'll take a look at the bark, and I might try drawing some of the bark. And again, ask lots of questions, see what kinds of shapes that you see. Right now I'm seeing lots of like striations, which means up and down lines. But notice that on editing those straight up and down lines, I would probably add in some wiggles, some curvy lines. And on my third attempt of editing, I would do some shading. And if I wanted to, I could even go back in with color. Okay, I found a really windy spot to sit. I recommend clipboards over a book because that will really keep your paper down, or maybe some tape. But anyway, upon closer inspection, I found this really cool knot in the tree. It was probably from where a branch used to be, and maybe it was cut off. So I'm having fun exploring some of the different shadings, and I can do cross-hatching if I want to do a little bit of showing some darker areas and lighter areas. Make sure that the direction of your shading matches the tree's bark. Otherwise, it might get a little confusing. So the bark kind of comes down, and it also has lots of different textures within it. So I can go ahead and suggest texture by marking it up. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be a suggestion. So you don't have to spend an hour on every single detail. You can just sort of start to sketch where some of those features are found. And then we'll assume the rest of the bark looks just like that. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to keep drawing, but I need 2 hands to do it in this wind. Okay, I had to come inside, and I thought I would also pick up on an earlier drawing of a red maple I have in my front yard, so you can see some of the progress of the different features I've captured, as well as observations. So let's take a look. So you can see I did a study of the whole shape of the tree. It was kind of like a gumdrop shape with a triangular base, and then I started filling in the different branches as I saw them. I also did clumps of leaves just to suggest where there are leaves popping up. I pulled the branch study down, and this is that branch enlarged, and it's easier for me to draw details of just one small shape than the whole overall picture. And then I wanted to go even closer up, so I zoomed in from one of the leaves to find the different branches and how they subdivide, which is pretty exciting. I have my bark sample, which I did with crayon. I took a leaf sample, and then I sketched that down here and added color using markers, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, here's some do's and don'ts of watercolor with marker. So find yourself some water-based markers. Those would be the typical Crayola markers or anything you happen to have around the house. Chances are, if it's not a permanent marker, it's water-based. So you'll need that, a plastic lid, a brush, and some water. All right, here I have my markers, a watercolor brush, and it's a different kind of watercolor brush. It holds the water inside. You don't have to have anything fancy, just something that you can transfer the paint onto your paper. So that could even be a Q-tip or some other fun thing. So look around, see what you got. And here's what we do. So you have your markers. You just scribble it on to a plastic lid. Mine's taken from yogurt. And I'm just going to transfer on some of my marker ink. Real easy. Consider what kinds of colors you need to mix. You can go ahead and mix them on your cover, or you can keep them separate and then mix them later with your water. It doesn't need a lot of water to work, so this is even easier than watercolors. Dip your brush into some water. Again, you don't even need a lot, okay? Go ahead and activate that marker ink. You can see just a little drop of water actually goes a real long way. you can mix up that color. As soon as you find the color you're looking for, you can bring it on over to your paper and transfer it. I'm going to fill in a little bit of color onto this pencil drawing of the branch. It doesn't need a lot of color, but maybe just like a little bit to highlight some sunlight, and then maybe to go back in and add in some shadows. So again, doesn't need a lot of water, and I probably have enough water on my brush still. Remember, the more water you use, the lighter the color. So the less water you have, the darker the color. Okay. So super easy, a lot of fun, and hopefully you can all give this a try with your projects at home. Pro tip, do not place your markers directly into the water. Once you get the tip of the marker wet from water, it will start to ruin your marker. So just transfer the marker ink onto dry plastic and you'll be good. Hi! We are going to take a bark sample using crayons and paper. So find your tree of choice and let's see what we can find for texture, physical texture, and also visual texture, because once we then capture the texture on the paper, it's now visual, isn't it? So let's take a look. I'm just going to take my paper, rest it on top of the tree's branch where I found interesting bark, and I'm just going to use the side of my crayon to go ahead and find that texture. Alright, here's my example of visual texture found from physical texture. Voila!